I want to introduce you to the Connie top. It's really super simple to sew for any beginner, and we've got some lace just sewn to the front, and I've added some pearly buttons to it, an insert here, and again with a lace trim, and of course we have the all-important flutter sleeves everyone loves for the summer, and a little lace trim at the hem as well. The back is elasticated, that makes it very easy for fit. And we have got buttonholes inserted just for the length of the strap, but if you have your child at home, then all you need to do is try it on and then sew the flutter sleeves in at the length they need to be, and that's it. We have got a whole collection, we call it the vintage collection, and this is the bunny skirt that I'm teaming up here, and it's just one of the many combinations you can do with this wonderful pattern. So I hope to see you in the course soon. You need some sellotape and a scissor, and of course your trusty tape measure to measure out your scale. That needs to be exactly 5 centimeters or 1 inch for everyone living in the US. And the assembly plan tells you exactly how to put things together. I'm using a really lovely linen in pink for my shoulder straps, and then I'm using this wonderful Michael Miller fabric from the Rosalinda collection to do the flutter sleeves, which I think is like so pretty. And then I also got the polka dot, and that's going to be the main fabric. I do all of this also on the bunny skirt to tie that in so that it comes as a set and looks really nice. I also found a really pretty lace in my stash, and I'm going to use that for the hem, front hem, and I'm also going to use that for my insert. And I'm using this fold over elastic for the back. It's not meant for that, but it works so well, and it's not as thick as other elastics, and it's super cheap. I got my whole roll for $16 on Amazon, which is such a bargain. So I really recommend that. The link to that is also in your instructions if you wanted to get that for yourself. Now I'm going to show you how to put together the flutter sleeves. What we're going to do is to create a tiny little rolled edge hem on the straight side of the flutter sleeves. So we're turning in once and then once again, and then we're top stitching it. Now you can of course use a narrow rolled edge hemmer foot. The stitch length again should be 3 or 3.5 at least. And you just keep doing that till the end. Just keep moving the seam allowance in with your left hand and your fingernails, and the right hand holds it quite taut. Of course, don't pull it. You still want to feed it in evenly, but you do have to have it taut. Now we're ready to put in our gather stitches. We want 2 lines of stitching, one close to the edge and one foot width next to that, half a presser foot, and then we go foot width next to that, leave a long thread hanging of course, pull it out, there we go. Now I marked the center of my flutter sleeve and the strap. I don't think that's necessary. I think that was complete overkill. All you need to do is really gather it and then make it fit onto your strap. Do the same on the other side then, and when that fits, we move over and sew it all on. Of course, you need to secure the threads here as well. Again, we put a pin in, and then we wrap the threads around in a figure of 8. That secures it really nicely. Distribute your gathers, and then we can put it on. Arrange your gathers as you go. And there we are. It's actually really pretty. I don't know. I've missed out flutters and I've discovered them and I actually like them. You wouldn't believe it, would you? I remember a few years ago I said I will never ever do a flutter sleeve. Oh dear. Ah man, I really like them now. and in the back you can see here how that needs to run in quite literally, because we're going to iron this over in a minute, right? So I could have stopped even 1 centimeter up from the end so that I wouldn't have any left standing over. Now we iron it from the upper side, work out that seam really well. Go to the end and iron that. That doesn't have to be 1 centimeter. That can be anything that that can be 0.5 even. Yeah, it just makes them a bit longer. It doesn't matter. And the same goes for the edge here. We want to fold it in, but it's not important that it's 1 centimeter. It's important that it's the same on both of your flutter sleeves. See, just put it right on that stitching line. Iron it. Put a few pins in. Not really sure you need them if it's really crisply ironed, but still just a few in a strategic position. Now we can sew them once around, and again needle down, presser foot up, turn the fabric, whoops, pin, and then we'll go down the other side. And I find it doesn't help me to go slow on this. In fact, I think it's tidier if you go fast. Now we're going to work the front, and I've already shown you we've got this lovely lace insert for this. I'm going to just top stitch that on, like so simple. Now we're going to put the insert on, and you want to iron over the edge 1 centimeter, and then we can put the lace underneath it. If you don't want lace underneath it, just top stitch it without. But if you do, you can see where the lace needs to sit. Beautiful. And I can go over to my sewing machine and top stitch it in. On my presser foot, I have got a little red mark, and because my presser foot has this see-through top, I can see where I'm at, and I'm lining up the edge of the fabric with that red mark on my presser foot. And if you haven't got one of those, if your presser foot is metal, completely metal, I would actually invest in one which has either a plastic tip or is plastic, see-through altogether. It is way easier to see what you're doing. Unless, of course, you have an industrial machine, then the foot is so small and so slim that you don't really need that. And now I can put the lining on. If you have a fabric with a lot of give, you might want to use some stay tape as well in this armhole area. I'm not using it. What I'm doing instead is I'm pushing in my fabric as I go. That's so important. If you pull on it, you're going to stretch the underarm because the fabric there lies on the bias in certain places. Then we're cutting back the seam allowance. And if you wanted to, you could also understitch the seam, which would give this additional support, the seam, so that you don't need stay tape. But if you're a beginner and you end up stretching it, then you're better not doing it at all. Now I'm going to put my flutter sleeves in the gap at the top edge here, at the neckline. And then line up your strap with the top, so that it will sit really nicely and not sit towards the front, because that will give you like a little sort of almost like an excess amount of fabric at the edge of the front piece, and that doesn't look very nice, so watch for that. Sew straight across, make sure that you find the center point here, sew to that center point, put the needle down, turn your fabric and go back up the other end. Can snip the tip. Actually, I didn't do that here and it was fine on my fabric, but it always depends, you know, so you might want to snip that as well. Pull out your flutter sleeves, let them flutter away. They are so beautiful. Next we want to bag in everything, and we're closing the hem, and if you are really observant, you notice that I'm not putting in the lace trim. Now I forgot about that, so you want to put the lace trim in first. You want to sew it to the shell of your piece first, and then we are going to sew the lining to it, and then it's inserted, and then we're just sewing that across. And I forgot to turn my camera on, so I'm just going to show you exactly what I've sewn here. That was not a lucky morning for me. And you can see here I left that turning gap. Make sure that you secure your stitches on either side of it. And now I'm going to turn through my front piece. Go to the furthest point of what you want to pull through and then pull from there, and that will make sure that you never have that much coming through the little gap that it will rip the fabric. And you can see with this light fabric you really didn't need the understitching necessarily. It's brilliant like that. On the other side as well, I'm really tucking under my lining, making sure it doesn't show. You also want to make sure that you really round out where you have the turning gap and don't get a straight line across when you iron it, because that will not look nice. It should be slightly rounded and exactly like it looks on the other side. And that's it. Now we can go on to the back. Now we're going to work the back, and that is really simple and quick. Actually, you're going to love this. You take your back and you put the right sides together, and we're going to sew it together lengthwise. 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way down. So get your fingers in there and just turn it through. Just like that. Just push the fabric through. Pick it out from the other side. It's big enough to do it like that. The opening is so wide you don't need to use like safety pins and stuff. I'm going to give this a press again now from this side. And here you can see I've cut my 4 bits of elastic. They are at the ready. And now I'm going to mark my tunnels. To be fair, they're exactly 1 inch, and your sewing machine actually has all those markings on it. And to be fair, I didn't really use these markings. The moment I sat on the sewing machine, I was just like going for the inch mark or the 2.5 centimeter mark on my sewing machine. Right, over to the sewing machine, stitch this in. You can use stitch length 3 or 2.5 for that. It doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to see those stitches after. Just line it up with the lines on your needle plate, and I've also got lines on the little plastic part below the needle plate, which I can also line it up with. Now I can put my elastic in, so I put my safety pin on the end, and if I have the shiny side of my elastic going in facing the top, the shiny side needs to come out the other end. Make sure that you don't let it slip in on the other side. Through. And I'm perfect example for, oh, don't let it slip in. Quick, put a pin in there. And I can let it slip. Oops, not that far. Pop it back out a bit and put a pin in to secure it. And now I've done all of them and I've got them pinned. Now we want to just sew over the ends to secure it in, and then I can take my pins out, both sides. And it's really important that you now check that this is actually the right fit for her, because you can always make that back a little bit smaller. And then we're going to pin the back piece just to the shell of the fabric. Right, so the lining hangs loose and it goes right into the corner here on both sides. And now I can go through my turning gap and grab that end and pull it through. You don't need to pull it through all the way. As long as you pull it through so you have got those seams standing out, that is absolutely fine. Then we're going to pin the lining to it as well. And I'm sewing straight across there. Stitch length 2.5, not too big on this because you don't ever want this to rip out. This is so small, I cut back my seam allowance so much, I'm just sewing straight over it. And then we can do the other side. Move it over. And do exactly the same. We pin it just to the shell fabric. And now we turn this through the turning gap as well. and we'll sew across that one, and that's it really. Looks absolutely beautiful, right? Perfect. Now the next step is to do all the top stitching, and when we're doing that, we're closing the turning gap and we're giving everything a little bit more support as well while we're doing it. Make sure that your stitch length now goes back up to 3.5. It never looks nice to have little dinky stitches going all the way around. And in this point, it's very important not to pull it. Push your fabric in so that this will never stretch. Sew along the edge. Always line it up with that same fixed point. I tell you, once you have your fixed point on your sewing machine down, it'll be so easy because you go on autopilot and it'll always come out nice. It does take practice, but I mean, you will get there. If I can do it, anyone can. Make sure the edges in the gap area lie exactly on top of each other. And then just overrun a bit, secure it, give it a good press, and we're almost done. I'm making it for a little girl that lives in Virginia, the beautiful Magdalena, and of course that's far away, so I'm going to put in buttonholes. But I have to say, if you don't have to do that because it's for your kid at home, just tuck it behind and pin it to. Try it on and then see where the strap looks best really, and then we're just going to sew it on, and I would suggest that you sew it on with one stitch line right at the top and then one overlapping the stitching line for the tunnel, and that's it right in that point. And that's it. Top done. I just want to show you what it looks like if it's to the outside, which I also think is really cute. I just used one buttonhole there, and that's for the Tilly top. That's also a beautiful top in this kind of look. It's really gorgeous, and you have to just see what you prefer. You could also use cam snaps, of course. Then you can make it very, very simple. Just sew them in and not use a flutter at all. Maybe for something really light for the beach, that is also quite a brilliant idea. Just put a little bit of lace, few buttons down the front, and there you are. I've also made the lovely bunny skirt as a combo with a Connie top, which you can also get in the shop. Of course, I think that looks really great. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I hope you're back for the next project in this lovely vintage collection. Bye for now.